Only a few weeks had passed since Edward had taken his first passenger train. It had been Edward's first day out in a long time, and almost all the engines had given Edward their full support. However, two did not. Gordon and 98462 were quite displeased with Edward. 98462 was one of three engines brought to the railway by Sir Topham Hatt on trial. He didn't have a name, just a number. He and Gordon had a great deal in common. They were both rude and cocky. However, unlike Gordon, he never seemed to know when enough was enough. You finally managed to make it out of the station, cackled 98462 as Edward backed into his berth. Edward had just returned from his passenger run and was feeling quite proud. What a useless engine you are, Edward. I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty of complaints from the passengers. You must have been running late all day. The others gave 98462 a foul look, but Edward just smiled. Actually, we were right on time. I'm very happy to be useful again. Edward knew that as long as he did not let 98462's words bother him, the engine wouldn't berate him for long. And soon enough, not getting any reaction out of Edward, the big blue bully drifted off to sleep. As Edward was now working regularly on passenger trains, Sir Topham Hatt had extended the timetables to run later into the evenings. This now meant that Edward, Gordon, and 98462 would be running the passenger services across the island. Edward had his doubts, but was determined to work his hardest. Fortunately for him, he ran a loop line, so I only saw Gordon and 98462 at the big stations. The weeks passed, and Edward thought his trains were getting heavier and heavier, or he was getting older and older. The other engines noticed this and offered to help. No, thank you, panted Edward. You've got your own trains to manage. We can't upset Sir Topham Hatt's timetable. Little did Edward know, 98462 had heard everything and made a plan. Next morning, Edward arrived to collect his first passenger train. But when he got to the platform, he saw that there were no coaches. Thomas must have woken up late again, he thought. He was just about to go collect some more when 98462 came hooting and wheeshing into the station with Edward's coaches. No need to fret, he said snootily. I'll be taking your train today. We mustn't upset Sir Topham Hatt's timetable. He laughed loudly as the guard blew his whistle. Edward was upset. He thought it best to get on with his work. That evening, Edward was backing into his berth as 98462 was boasting loudly. We don't need Edward anymore. I've proven I can handle 2 trains at once. Why keep him around when all he does is get in the way? Edward helped build these rails that you run on, fumed Thomas. Without him, none of us would have a railway to work on. 98462 interjected. He's a thing of the past. Us bigger tender engines are stronger, faster, more up to date than old iron. Edward finally gave up. He decided to take a stand against 98462. Next morning, he woke up earlier than usual to collect his coaches and make it to the platform before 98462. The yard was silent, and Edward felt sure that he had beaten him. "And what do you think you're doing?" fussed 98462. Edward tried to sound brave. "Collecting my coaches for my passenger train." "I don't think so. You are nothing but slow and old. You're going to sit in the shed and wait to be sent away. Or even better, scrapped." Before Edward could say anything else, 98462 backed down onto his coaches. Edward's heart sank, but not for long. "And just what do you think you're doing?" bellowed a familiar voice. It was Sir Topham Hatt. Collecting my train, sir," said 98462, trying to look as innocent as possible. "From what I have seen, that is not the case at all. I have had passenger complaints about how they were taken to the wrong stations, as well as fellow workers complaining about your treatment of others." 98462's face went as white as a ghost. "My engines," continued Sir Topham Hatt, "work hard and help fellow engines. You have done neither of those. Let me remind you that I have brought you here to work on trial, and I can see now you are not a good fit for my railway. You shall go back home to the other railway tonight. But now, I want you to go back to the shed." 98462 couldn't muster up a response, so he went sulkily back to the sheds. Sir Topham Hatt turned to Edward. "You must understand, Edward. You are one of my engines. You might not think so, but you are not alone on this railway. If you have any troubles, you must come and see me right away. Understand?" Edward could tell from his warm smile that Sir Topham Hatt was told everything. He looked across the yard and saw Henry and Thomas smiling back. "Now, you have a train to pull, and after that, I want you to have a nice long rest." "Oh, thank you, sir." As he set off, he felt his position on Sir Topham Hatt's railway was secure, and he had no more trouble from that day on. That was until Gordon. But I mustn't say any more, or I shall spoil the next story.